Mold Tool is the official sponsor of the Grease and Glamour podcast. Established in 1853, Mold Tool has grown to become a recognized leader in lubricant technology. Racing teams around the world have trusted Mold Tool to deliver the endurance and performance needed to compete at the highest level. Even if you're not racing on the track, Mold Tool's full range of synthetic lubricants will protect your engine against wear and tear of your daily commute. Stop by Universal Imports to purchase Mold Tool's line of products today.
Turn that music off and we're going to play something different. Oh, couldn't wait to do this all day long. Well, okay, welcome back to the Grease and Glamour podcast. I am Mark Fierbacher, your host. I'm here today with Aaron Kane and with Ray Amy. And, well, I figured I had to really come back with something amazing. We've been gone for 6 months. With the pandemic, we decided to just sort of not try the Zoom thing. We had tried it. It didn't work that great. And we said we'll just take a break. So what do we come back with big? Well, how about somebody who's here in studio with us, who's in the Songwriting Hall of Fame, the Rochester Music Hall of Fame, has sold 100 million records, somewhere in that neighborhood, is a 3-time Grammy nominee, has somewhere like 50 hit singles with classics such as Jukebox Hero and the number one song, I Want to Know What Love Is, Waiting for a Girl Like You. And then he was in the band, a little known band named Foreigner, and then went on to do an amazing solo career with songs like Midnight Blue and Between You and Me. Bottom line, if he wrote it or sang it, you've probably heard it. Mr. Lou Gramm in studio.
Welcome, Lou.
That's quite an introduction. Thank you so much.
Well deserved.
Yes, well, Lou Gramm, hands down one of the best voices in rock music, and we are fortunate enough to have you here to talk about cars and music, two of my favorite things, and I think probably two of your favorite things
Absolutely.
as well.
In that order.
In that order, cars and music.
Nice.
So, you know, everybody in Rochester knows that it's not a car show in Rochester unless Lou Gramm's walking around. Do you have your cars in the shows, or are you more there as a spectator?
If it's a show that's going to be judged, I don't do that in town at all. But if it's just a cruise night, I bring a car.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah. Yeah. So what are your favorite, what are there favorites? Do you have favorite cruise nights?
This past year, because things were so odd with the epidemic and everything, my favorites were not showing. Shriners on Bay Road, I really like a lot.
Okay. So I know there's one out here in Macedon at the Log Cabin.
Yes, the log cabin's great.
Yep. Food's not
I'm
bad.
sorry,
either.
I can't remember the one I'm thinking of.
Well, let's talk about your cars, though. If we can talk about your collection a little
Now
bit.
that I can remember.
All right, here we go. Let's start with your favorite down to your least favorite.
You know, I've been asked that a few times. I can't choose favorites because they're like kids. Now, which one of your kids is your favorite?
Right.
Depends on the day, right?
Yes.
It depends on which one's in the room.
So I'll start from the first ones that I bought. So in a little story that goes with it, or you just want the cars?
Oh no, roll with it.
1992, I was in Los Angeles working with Foreigner on a couple new songs, and I saw that I had the Auto Trader, and I saw that there was a 1965 442. All it said was 65 442 3500. And I thought to myself, 3,500. Oh God, what's this look like? You know? But I called the person, and it turned out that it was his mother's car. She bought the car at the end of 1965, she wanted to buy a Cutlass, and the guy sold her an automatic on the column, power steering, 442. And I don't think she knew any better, but she had the car for over 30 years. She put only 30,000 miles on it, and she was backing out of the garage one day and scratched the rear quarter on the door rail, the overhead door rail. And when she heard it scratch, she put it in park, got out of the car, saw that it was scratched, turned the car off, and wouldn't drive anymore.
Wow.
So she gave the car to her son, which I find incredible, but he didn't want it.
Wow.
So he's the one who put the ad in for $3,500. And I called him, and I met him at a gas station on the way to the airport. I was going home to Rochester. A friend of mine from Rochester who lives in California was driving me to the airport, and I told him about the car, so we stopped. The guy met us at a gas station. And I looked at the car, and I saw the little scratch, but the rest of the car, the body was perfect. The interior had a crack in the seat right on the seam. I checked the mileage out, and it was 31,500. And I checked the undersides and the motor and the trunk. And I was going to try and lowball them, but I thought, you could lose a good car by doing that. Even if you lowball him and then try to buy it closer to the price, he might not want to deal with you.
I've seen that happen
Yep.
before. Yeah.
Yep. So I gave him what he was asking for, which was 30. I think it was 3,500. And he let us take the car on his plates to my friend's house, who was only about 5 miles away, drop the car off, and bring him back his plates.
Now, this was in California?
This is in California. And so then my friend continued to take me to the airport, and by the time I got back to Rochester, he already had a trailer truck picking the car up the next day.
Wow.
So it got home about 5 days later, and the destination the drop off was at a friend's place, and right across at his office right across the street from that was a automotive repair shop, body shop.
Yep.
That I had worked on before on, and they did really good work. So when they saw the car come off the trailer, I brought it over there and showed him a couple scratches, the scratch on the rear quarter. And as it turned out, the guy who drove the truck, was getting a car off that was on a higher level than my car, and stood on the hood near the front windshield and put 2 dents in it. And well, here's the thing. He made me see the sheet of paper if there was anything wrong with the car.
Right.
And I hadn't seen the dents yet, so I wrote that everything was good on it. Then when he left, I saw the dents. So I called the truck company, and he says, "Too bad."
Well, you and I could definitely share horror stories when it comes to cars.
Yep. And so I didn't know what to do with that back in 91.
Sure.
And I drove it like that for 20 some years, more than that. And then just last year, another friend of mine who does body work says, "Hey, didn't you ever hear of the dent doctor? He's going to be here today." I said, "Can I bring my 442 down?" He says, "Yeah." So he took the 442 down. He gently pulled down the roof
Yep.
material near the front of the car, and massaged out the dents, and then put the roof material back. You can't see that it was ever.
Wow.
Well, and I think you stated this before, I don't know where I read it or heard it, but that you really like to try to keep the paint as original as possible.
And,
So
and
it's
95% original.
yeah, that's awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's really great. You know, I did hear this interesting story. So we had before we took our little break, we had Mario Andretti on, and he had shared this funny anecdote with us that he was out in California driving with a friend, and they were going a little too fast, and they were pulled over by the police. And the police officer actually said to them, "You're driving like Mario Andretti." And Mario Andretti pulled out his license and said, "Well, I am Mario Andretti." So they had a chuckle about it. Needless to say, I don't think he was ticketed. But it reminded me of a story I had heard about you a while ago. I think I read it in one of the publications that you had a car that you sold and then later on regretted selling it and bought it back.
Yes. The second car in my collection that I bought was a 1965 GTO, and I bought it in Arizona from this older gentleman. He had to be in his early 80s, and he and his friend back in the 60s raced that car at a drag strip in L.A. Is it L.A. County drag strip or something? I can't remember what it is, but it's a big famous drag strip. And his friend owned the car, but they were partners in racing it. And after 25 or 30 years, his friend passed away from cancer, and his friend's wife gave him the car. So he'd been driving it around as just a driver for another 10 years, and was going to buy some property and decided to put the car for sale. And I had a friend in Phoenix at a place called Chevs and Vets, and he agreed to meet me there with the car, and we put the car up on the lift and really gave it a once over. And I was going to try and knock the price down, but the price was $12,500.
Well, you know, my brain went to this automatically when I thought about the story, going, you know, the guy probably wanted a lot more money, and you would have said, "Well, why do you want so much more?" He goes, "Sir, this car was owned by Lou Gramm."
So I bought the car. I had it until 2009, and by then I had about 7 or 8 cars. And we won't go through all those stories, believe me. But I you know, it's difficult to maintain them when you don't have professional somebody working with you to keep them all running good and all the brakes right. And
well, I do want to ask you. So you did spend some time living out in California, right, in L.A.
Just when we were recording out there.
So I know, you know, when you listen to Rev on the Red Line, you did some drag racing down Lake Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to drag in the aqueducts in L.A.? You know, you always see the movies like, I think of Grease, you know, with them driving in the, I think it's an aqueduct where everybody drives.
I never did, but I remember renting in 1979 while we were recording Head Games. I rented a '79 Z28 and went out at night looking for a race, and I found a few.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think it was San Bernardino Drive.
Yeah, it's I would imagine they're easier to find out there than here, probably.
Oh, definitely. but you know, that's from driving 3 or 4 days for 2 or 3 hours each day at night after we got out of the studio. And so for those 3 or 4 days, I found 2 races, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Things are not like they used to be.
No, not at all. No.
Can we talk about Rev on the Red Line? Is that a song written from personal experience, or
yes.
So was that early days?
It was the early days. I was in Black Sheep then, but it was still 4 or 5 years before Foreigner. And I was fortunate enough to find in the city a gentleman who had a '69 Nova Super Sport, 396, 375 horse, turbo 400 automatic with a stall speed of I think 32 or 3,300. So that means it would shift there on its own if it was left in drive.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful car. I think it had 12,000 miles on it. I think I paid $2,500 for it. That's what things were going for back in the early 70s. That's when I bought it. And I would race up and down Lake Avenue, and I rarely lost in that car.
So that was the one car. That was the car that you
That's the car I was writing about. Yes.
Okay, so did it truly have 400 horses tucked under the hood?
It was 396, 375 horses, but it was a factory blueprint car, so it probably had a little over 400.
Nice.
Okay, yeah. So you can't rhyme much with anything other than a solid even number like 400.
So when is the last time you were on Lake Avenue revving the red line?
The last time I was on Lake Avenue, I was at Lake Avenue and Ridgeway. And I came up against a 1970 Corvette 427. And I was on the inside, he was on the outside. And we took off, and I had him by a little bit, and he started creeping up on me. And then there was someone in his lane. It looked like an old station wagon with boxes piled so high in the back that I knew they didn't see us coming. And I was starting to gain on him again. And that person in his lane suddenly just made a right-hand turn into a driveway. And when he was clear, he kept on going, and I hit the back of the car.
Ooh.
And it drove me into two parked cars.
Wow.
Oh. Well, Ray has a Ford Maverick. So
Yeah, 73 Maverick with a
Grabber?
No, not a grabber though, but it's got a 347 stroker in
Oh.
it. So I'm pushing about 440 horsepower out of it. Yeah.
So he wants to
take
see
that out to cruise nights?
I do, but I'm down on I'm down in Pavilion, a little tiny town south of Leroy. So I always hit the stuff in Brockport and Batavia, that area. They had some great American graffiti cruises this year because they didn't have, because of COVID, they didn't have all the meetups going on. So there were all these pop-ups. So I did a couple of those, and those are really neat. So people were literally just cruising up and down the road instead of sitting in a parking lot in the towns. And that was very, very neat to fortunately, my way home that night, we hit a deer with the Maverick, and now it's got to be repaired this spring, but she'll be back out. So
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, I'll tell you, people here know us as for European cars. We do a lot with vintage Porsches and that sort of thing. And so people would say that my favorite car is probably an air-cooled, late 70s Porsche 911, which it is. But my close second, which my mother wouldn't even know this, is a 77 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, Smokey and the Bandit, Burt Reynolds, all the way. So I'm in your camp with the with the GMs.
Well, let me tell you.
Although Ray's car is pretty snazzy, I will say. He almost killed me in it.
That was fun.
In 1979, after we came home from touring the Head Games album, I drove into Manhattan and parked my car and went into Manhattan Porsche Audi. And this is the end of 78, and ordered a 1979 930 Turbo Porsche. It was petrol blue with solid black interior. Even the inside top, which is usually white, I had it black. And it came after, I waited about 3 months for it.
Well, every rock star in the late 70s had to have a 911 or some sort of Porsche at that. It seemed like that it had to be in the arsenal somewhere, right?
and so it was a beautiful, beautiful car, and it was wicked fast.
Yeah.
And I changed the oil when I was supposed to. I brought it. I lived in Westchester in a town called Katona, right near White Plains. Mm-hmm. And I'd go across the Connecticut line. That was the closest Porsche dealer, and had the oil changed there. And I'd go across the street to a diner. And that car was so beautiful, and
Well, those old air-cooled Porsches now are skyrocketing in price.
I get Hemmings, and I see my car in the back of Hemmings going for the mid 200,000s.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
We actually have 3 that we are doing in various stages of rebuilds out there right now, and I tell the customer, of course, it sounds like a sales job, but I say, don't even bat an eye as to how much this costs, because it'll come back to you. The air-cooled era is something that won't go away. They'll always be, and the longer that span is from when they were to now, is that car is going to get more expensive.
So I owned that car 19 years, and you know why I sold it? Because of my family. I moved from Katona back to Rochester, and the streets were so bad, as they still are in Rochester, I was afraid I was going to spring the frame.
Yeah, right.
You know that?
Yeah.
I was afraid I was going to bend the frame and render that car as a piece of junk.
Yeah, useless. Yeah.
Wow.
So I sold it, and you know what I got for it? $41,000
Wow.
at an auction. I paid 44, and I got 41, and I thought I did good.
Yeah.
And they were still bringing that kind of money back in the late 80s.
Sure.
And it's just over the past 10 or 15 years that they've gone through the roof.
But, it's so hit and miss with all cars. I mean, and with European cars, sometimes it's so polarizing, because you can take just a few years later when Porsche came out with the 928s, which were very powerful cars, but they just did nothing. People paid a fortune for them new, 60, 70 grand back then, and they were worth half of that 3 years later.
I see ads for them, and it's low mileage, blah, 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 this and that, and it's in the high teens.
You can buy them for nothing. Yeah, you really can. So, let's. I'd like to sort of segue a little bit into music for a minute and say that, in Rev on the Red Line, you talk about you're winning the race gets the girl. But I would guess that becoming a rock star gets more girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, huh?
Musicians in Rochester, people that like rock and roll music from Rochester, Ray and I, of course, we are musicians. We're in a local band, and we know all about Black Sheep. In fact, we know one of your former band members, Donnie Mancuso, quite well.
Shout out to Donnie.
Yeah. Donnie's a great.
Hey, Don.
He's a great guy. And how do you go from being in Black Sheep, which was a successful local band, but you're just doing pretty much the local music thing, and then you are, next thing you know, you're an arena rock sensation. Like, could you take us through that a little bit?
Well, Black Sheep had been together about 3 or 4 years, and we got an offer. We sent in a demo to Chrysalis Records. That's a European label, and they wanted to sign us because they were making the move from Europe and establishing their first base in New York and then California and some other places. So they signed us to a single. Okay, so we recorded the single and the flip side. So we recorded 2 songs for them, and we were waiting for them to release it, and waiting, and they finally released it. And they didn't even, in the States, they didn't even have a promotion department to push the song, make sure it was getting airplay and that there were records in the stores and stuff. They had none of that. So it got local airplay in Western New York, and that was the end of it. And then we played at a place called Westminster Park Inn, which became Fantasy Swings. Do you remember that at all?
No.
Yeah, it was right down East River Road.
Okay.
And we ended up playing the Auditorium Theater with Procol Harum.
Oh yeah.
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 Okay. And they were on. Oh, that's right. They were on Chrysalis Records. I'm talking about. We played. I'm trying to think who we played with. In Syracuse, that was on Capitol Records, and I think we opened for Aerosmith then, and a guy from Capitol Records was there and heard about the band and heard the singles and knew that we asked off of Chrysalis Records because we knew they weren't going to help us, and we got signed to Capitol Records within the next 2 weeks, and then went to New York, the record plant, and recorded our first album.
Oh.
And there's 3 or 4 studios within one studio at the record plant. There's Studio A, Studio B, Studio C. So we were in Studio B, and in Studio C, right next to us, was John Lennon.
Wow.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions for you, is that, Ray, Aaron, and myself, I could keep my cool and not admit this, but we were kind of giddy school children, knowing that we're gonna get a chance to talk to Lou Gramm. So there has to be those people that you felt that way about, and I'm guessing John Lennon could be up there on that list.
He's at the top of the list.
It's got to be at the top, yeah.
You've played with some of the Beatles before, haven't you?
Yes. I played with Ringo, and I think that's, as far as the Beatles go, I think that's about it.
Yeah, Ringo does his all-star band.
I sat in with them.
Yeah, it's great.
A couple songs when they were at Canandaigua.
But you'd be remiss if we didn't talk about all the stuff is in your book, Jukebox Hero.
Yeah.
Folks don't have it.
Yeah, by the way, yes, this is really one of the things I wanted to tell our listeners, is that there's this really wonderful book. Right now, I've just bought out Barnes & Noble, but they promised me they're restocking.
And it's available online.
And it's a steady sell. They said, man, there's so many people come in and buy this book. It's a very steady sell. It's funny that the lady commented on that. She saw I had 3 of them in my hand. She said, can I ask what you're doing with 3 of the same book? I said, well, it just so happens. But the book is actually now, it's kind of a re-release. It was written in 2013, and then you added a few things.
Added I think 2 chapters.
Can you, what compelled you to want to add to it? What did you feel it was missing?
I think that where we left the original book, there were some unfinished things, and I think when we put the extra chapters in, that's when Mick and I patched up our personal differences, mm-hmm. and we received the Songwriters Hall of Fame award.
Hall of Fame, yeah.
Well, and I know we're all waiting for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to acknowledge you, which should be any minute. But
I think it will happen. I know that. I don't think that the reason why we're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is music. I think it's personal and it's politics.
Well, you hear that. Yeah. You hear that from a lot of bands. There's a lot of bands that deserve to be in there that are not. Yep. So. Okay, so now we're losing my train of thought here. I have so many questions.
Well, I have a quick question. So the book, did you always want to write a book, or is it something that kind of happened?
It kind of happened. I think it was just from me telling stories over dinner or over coffee or something, I've had so many people say, you know what? You should write a book. And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, But I started hearing that from a lot of people, and then when I met Scott Petoniak,
yep,
he says, listen to me, serious. I know you've heard this before, but seriously, you and I should write a book.
It's a good read. It's an easy read. It's got a lot of great information. It's a very honest book. So I don't want to really get too much into talking about Foreigner and the history. Everybody knows that, and they can find out about it when they read the book. But I do have a question when it comes to you, Mick, and cars. So Mick being from England, was he into the British cars at all? Did you guys ever have a little fun car rivalry? Or
not so much. He had in Manhattan, I think he had a Suburban for his runaround car with the family, and I think he had a Jaguar for his nights out.
Yeah, you'd have to have a Jag or something like that.
So whenever when we went to California and I rented the Z28, he had a small Mercedes,
Yeah, right. Coming from two very different angles.
Absolutely.
Probably why that band worked so well.
For the most part,
in some ways, yeah.
Right.
So you then you start your solo career after Foreigner. You have a bunch of hits in that. Fast forward even further, you create this band with your brothers, the Lou Gramm Band.
Yes.
And I think Donnie joined you back up for that.
Yes, he did.
Right?
Yes.
And could you tell us a little bit about that album? Because that album speaks to me, speaks to Ray also. In fact, I think you've got it here.
I got it right here. Yeah. I think it's one of your best releases outside of Foreigner for sure.
Thank you. I think I've been I gave my heart to the Lord. It must have been about 27 years ago, and I remember when it happened. Foreigner had just played sold out concert at Madison Square Garden. And it was a wonderful show. I think it was one of our best sounding shows, and the audience was feverish. They were going crazy. It was a lot of fun. And after the show, all the people from Atlantic Records in New York were there. All the musicians who lived in New York were there, and we went out, and what started out as a small dinner ended up drinking wine, and then vodka and everything else. Pretty soon the pot came out, and before you know it, I was back at somebody's apartment doing lines of cocaine,
yeah.
and that continued on, talking, yep, and I just kind of stopped and took a step back, even in my frame of mind that I was in, which was, and I knew I was not sober. I realized that it was all bullshit. Every bit of it was bullshit.
Yeah.
Everybody's stroking each other, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
why don't we do an album together? Oh no. Oh
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
do
A lot of that.
Yada. Oh, wouldn't this be great if we could do that? How about me being the other singer? Me and Lou, and
Yeah. Right.
I'll bring in my sax player.
Yeah.
Probably
a lot of imaginary super groups that potentially
correct.
would have been formed.
Yep. And I remember being dropped off at my hotel by a limo, and I got out, and I somehow made it to my room. And I was so wrecked. I think I don't remember ever being that wrecked. And I got in the door, double locked the door, turned around. I took 2 steps towards the bed, and I fell on the floor. And I started crying. I started crying, and I told the Lord that this is not the kind of life I wanted to live. This is not what my parents brought me up to be like. I wouldn't want my wife or my kids ever to see me like this. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, on and off. And I'm sick of it. And I begged him to please take this evil from my life. And when I woke up the next morning, I was still on the floor. And I was supposed to catch, I think, a 8:30 or 9 o'clock plane back to Rochester to be with my family. And instead I called my attorney, who was a friend of mine. And he was at the party. And first thing he said to me is, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." He says, "You were flying last night." I says, "I know that, you know." I says, I canceled my flight back home. I says, "And I'd like you to do something for me." And he said, "Yeah, sure, what?" I says, "There's a place called Hazleton in outside of Minneapolis." I says, "It's a drug rehab place. I've read a lot of good things about it over the last few years." I says, "I'd like you to call and try and get me admitted in there." I says, "I'm not fooling around trying to cut down or stop for 3 or 4 days, and then when I start up again, it's a big blowout." I says, I want to change my life." I says, "Not only do I want to change it," I says, "I have to change it or I'm not going to be here too long." So I went to Hazleton for 30 days. It's, what's that, 4 weeks? Yeah, 4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah.
And of course I called my wife after I knew I was booked there and told her that I wouldn't be flying home, that I was going to Hazleton. And she started crying. She was so happy for me. And I went there and I got an incredible education about what drugs and alcohol does to your body and your mind. And they had priests and pastors there. And I saw a pastor who I talked to for a couple hours. And, he told me what that stuff does to your soul also.
Oh, yeah. So you write this album, I guess, and that's your, I guess, I'm reluctant to, it is Christian rock, but it's not Christian rock the way a lot of people think of Christian rock. I had a pastor once who said to me, the reason he doesn't like most Christian rock songs is that it sounds like it's a song about a girlfriend that's just replacing the girlfriend with Jesus. And then, so you have those types of songs, and then there's some other bands, and they're very good, but they're very technical. They're more of like a musician's type of band. But when you hear the first track on that album, it's got such bite, and I'd like to just play. Voice in this album,
I let it go. I let it all go.
Perfect.
Yeah. You could feel it was like the floodgates, right? Just opened up. So, is this a one and done album? Are you going to write some more of this type of stuff? Is any of that in the future?
I'm looking for number 2 for sure.
I think there'll be number 2 at some point soon.
Beautiful.
I did hear that there are some old unreleased Lou Gramm songs that we might be seeing.
Yes, there are. We're working on those right now, and we're hoping that we don't have contractual issues with Atlantic Records, because those songs were written during my solo album, but they weren't on the record. They weren't finished or they weren't good enough then, and we had better songs, so we put those on the album, and those were kind of the ones that were in limbo.
Yeah.
So I thought I could take a look at them and make them into something better than what they are, and release them myself. But apparently, which I found out, anything you recorded while you were under contract to Atlantic belongs to them.
They still own.
Yeah, whether it was on an album or whether it's been sitting there for 30 years.
Wow.
It has to be tough as a musician. You have this creativity inside you that wants to come out, but you have all this bureaucracy that surrounds it all. So nothing's just easy.
So I also, my percentage of the royalties for my solo albums was, even though I had so much success with Foreigner, you'd think that they would give me a better royalty rate. I had the same royalty rate as a guy off the street recording his first album for Atlantic Records, So my albums didn't even go gold, but they did pretty good. And when I'd see my royalty statement, it was what's this?
Enough to buy lunch, huh?
Well, let me ask you, I just would like to get this perspective from someone who was such a big influence in the rock genre for so many years, and in a time where people were buying vinyl, CDs, cassettes, and that's how you could make money. Where do you make the money these days? Is it all in touring? And now with COVID, you can't even do that. So I feel for these musicians.
Mostly in the writing.
Yeah. So you're right, because your songs just land on Spotify now, and I'm not even sure how the royalties work on stuff like that.
It's very, very poor on Spotify.
It's very, very poor.
Yeah.
The poorest of any of them, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
They're not a very generous bunch.
No, not at all.
No, here's the thing, and this is what a lot of non-musicians don't realize, and a lot of kids don't realize these days, because they listen to these songs. My kids know all of your songs because they've heard them on the radio. But Ray and I were talking before you came, saying back in the day you got an album and you listened to it start to finish because the songs were in order for a reason. There was a whole cadence to how an album went.
Right.
Yes.
And now, if I even see the random or shuffle button, I freak out. We're not doing anything on random or shuffle.
Or the kids download 2 songs from this band, 3 songs from that band. It was so important to have the right running order.
Of course.
Songs that the last song on side 1 is a kick song that makes you want to turn it over and keep playing.
That's right. And we did have to turn it over.
And I'm still a big vinyl guy, and I love the experience, dropping that needle on one side, opening up the vinyl or whatever's inside the lyric sheet, and just reading it as it plays through. And you have to pay attention because it is a needle going across, and you have to get up and flip it over, so you're engaged in the whole process. And that just doesn't happen today. Like you said, it's all about the hit single and nothing else. The whole album could be crap. The rest, that one song could hit, and nobody even listens to the rest of it. In fact, I think now artists are even putting out just singles. There's not even record albums coming out anymore.
That's
it's
right.
Such a shame.
Yeah.
Well, the songs that I was hoping to work on and release would have been a 3-song EP, but putting it online to be downloaded.
Yep.
Either any one of the songs or the 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, I just think the younger generation doesn't know the feeling of going to the record store, buying the album, or even the cassette. I had a Walkman glued to me through my high school years, and you'd get the cassette or the album, and you'd come home and you'd listen to the whole thing, and you'd maybe you got lucky and the lyrics were written in there because you couldn't go on Google to find out what they were saying in the song. And there was just something so special. I mean, even for example, like you take the Double Vision album. You look at the album covers. I mean, they have a meaning.
What, did we get in trouble for that?
Yeah.
Oh, did you know about that?
No.
We were wondering if you guys did it or if it was promotion guy that did it.
It was an album cover artist that had done a number of very good album covers over the years and wanted to do this, and when we saw it, we saw it and we go, wow, that's great. It's just it's a girl in a boy's bathroom. You could see the urinals.
Yeah.
Wiping her phone number off the wall.
Yeah, I love it.
know, and we were told that it was pornographic, that she was masturbating on the urinal.
Oh,
wow.
And the Bible Belt banned the album, and they had pictures in the paper that we saw eventually of people burning all their Foreigner albums, a big bonfire, all their Foreigner albums, and then one at a time, big stations around the country refused to play anything by us. WBBC in Boston,
so cancel culture was even happening back then, huh?
Yep. And that album, coming after a 7-time platinum double vision, Head Games barely sold 1 million albums.
And it's
because of the controversy, you think?
Yes, I know it was.
Absolutely, yeah.
You speak in the book, or you say in the book about the going out on tour, playing your old hits, some of which, were like Hot Blooded, some of these songs that have a little bit of a provocative nature to them. And then also mixing those with your new songs that have more of a Christian tone to them.
Well, let me interrupt. This is not with Foreigner, though. This is my,
yes, that's with you. Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you reconcile that? It's in the book, but if you could give us a little taste of that.
I would preface these songs by saying that it's been in my heart to write and record a Christian album. I said the Lord has done so much for me, letting me survive a brain tumor, which just about every other brain surgeon said was not operable. And I says I came through that operation, I says, and the next 6 or 7 years were a living hell for me. I says, but I think I'm back fairly close to 100%. I dealt with and I'm dealing with any shortcomings left from the operation, and I'm loving life again.
Nice. So I'm curious, take us back to that time when you in that hotel room, coming out of there, going into rehab and sobriety, meeting the pastor and really reconnecting with your faith, reconnecting with God, and then going out on tour again eventually with Foreigner. Was there any spiritual battle going on inside you that was like...
They all knew that I came back from rehab, and they were slapping me on the back saying, "We're so glad you did that, Lou. You were so bad. You were in such bad shape." And I'm thinking to myself, I'm in such bad shape. I said, okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate that, And so we'd play our shows, and then we'd have to travel 400 or 500 miles to the next city on the bus. I had the back lounge, the little area behind the back wheels. And then there were bunks, and then there was the front lounge, which was big, had a stove and a refrigerator and a cool stereo and all that stuff. And that's where we used to play euchre. and Crazy Eights and all sorts of stuff, and we play a couple hands, and then it was, and so we probably would leave the show we were playing at around. The show would end around a little after 11. Then we'd go sell merchandise and sign things for the. That by the time we'd actually get in the bus and head on the road for the next city, it was probably about 1:00.
Wow.
And the crew was still tearing down the equipment.
Yeah.
So we'd be on the road 6-7 hours sometimes, and we would be playing cards and smoking and snorting and drinking hard alcohol for the whole trip. And one at a time you'd see guys go, "That's the last hand for me.
And that at some point though, everybody was clean on some tours, though, right? Or no? Did that not happen?
No. So after I gained sobriety, I stayed in the back lounge, and I knew that they were still playing up there, just like I used to play with them up there.
Sure.
And so when I had to use the restroom was right across from where they were playing. And I go out there and I go, "How's it going, guys?" And they go, "Oh, good, Lou. We're having a lot of fun." Blah blah blah. Blah. And I'd come out of the bathroom, and they take me by the arm and bring me over to where they were, and I could see the mirror with the and all that, and again they go, "We just want to tell you how proud we are of you for doing that."
That's great.
Because we were so worried that you were going to die.
But here that is, right?
And I had some pretty funky nights.
Sure.
But believe me, out of 6 people in the band, I was in the lower third of the ones that were really getting crazy.
Wow.
But they were so happy that I straightened myself out, and I said. And I told them as I was walking back to the back lounge again, looked over my shoulder, I says, "I'm waiting."
That's right.
That's right.
So,
I've been waiting.
That's right.
There you go, yeah.
Keep
there
going.
Acapella, here we go.
I think that this is why you're so highly revered by so many. You're a very humble person. You kept to your Rochester roots. You started here. You live here. You're a big member of the community. I think you've even made a joke that one day you might go get a job at Wegmans. That would be something to see, I will tell you. And this book really tells it like it is. It's a great read. I recommend anybody out there to go grab that book. In fact, the reason I bought out the shelf was that we are going to ask Lou if he'll be so kind to autograph these books, and I am going to announce a winner from one of our listeners that we're going to give the book away to. And whoever isn't so lucky will have to go out and buy it, but you can find it in your bookstore, find it online, I'm sure on Amazon and all the other places.
Can I make an aside?
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, Foreigner had a reunion show, big
2017,
reunion show with his new band and the original band.
Yes.
And I was obviously in the dressing room with the original band, and there was nobody drinking.
That's awesome.
Not Mick, not anybody.
That's great.
And I didn't say a word, but I was so thankful.
That's awesome, yes.
And it probably just creates a whole different dynamic, a good dynamic.
Well, I had no idea what the band was going to sound like. We only had one rehearsal. And here we were playing with the band that he had been playing with for 4 or 5 years now.
Right.
And when we came on and played our songs from the earlier albums, the band was killer.
Oh, yeah.
There's no sloppy mistakes.
It was tight. You sounded great. The videos, you can find them if you search for them. Really, really good performance.
And I was on top of the world. And I'm thinking to myself, this is what I always pictured the band sounding
Right.
like.
Well, I kicked myself 2 years ago. You played with Donnie and our friend Dave Drum and Steve Bartolotta at the Steel Rail Fest, and I didn't get a chance to get there that day.
That was a lot of fun.
They had a blast. I know they did. It's a big highlight of their life. So, anyway, please check out the book. Go buy Lou Gramm's countless records, whether they're in Foreigner or his solo career or the Lou Gramm Band, which is awesome. And we'll end with kind of a couple quick rapid fire questions. Your favorite car ever?
I think my 68 Camaro Super Sport.
And is that a car you still have now? Okay.
Nice.
Never get rid of it?
Never.
Okay. Because if you sell it to me, I will use that line and say, yeah, this car was
formerly owned
by Lou Gramm, so it's doubled in price since you sold it to me. Your favorite song to perform?
Jukebox Hero.
Aaron, I know this was killing you because you wanted to tell them your mom's favorite song.
Yeah, my mom's favorite song is Midnight Blue. And I
Oh,
told her
jeez,
that
that's
we
nice.
were coming in, and she was like all in her glory. So
Yeah, I love Midnight Blue.
yeah.
Can I tell a quick story?
Absolutely.
You can stay all day long.
We'll keep going for the next hour if you want.
Where's this going to be heard, by the way?
So this podcast for our listeners and for Lou is on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, everywhere podcasts are found. And we're also, with Lou's permission, going to be putting this up on YouTube as a video podcast as well.
So there's probably a good chance that some of the foreigner guys may come across this and hear it.
Sure.
We hope so. Is that good?
I can try and hide it from them if you like.
Hey, we can edit anything you like, so that's fine. You were going to tell a story,
I'm not
though.
Tell it now.
All right, off air, we'll get that.
Well,
I mean, I just want to say personally, Lou, I think, as growing up, like I said, knowing that you're from Rochester and the voice that you have is just golden. And the music you put out, I've been a fan for a long
Thank
time.
you so much.
And knowing that you've gone through sobriety, come to the faith, and putting out some great faith music is what I call it. And where you are today, I just thank God for that and thank you for that. So
Thank you. I thank God for that, too.
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Not a day goes by, really.
Yeah, Ray and I share that sentiment. And, a song that a lot of people, I didn't even know this was a Lou Gramm song, although I've heard it a million times because I love the movie, but Lost in the Shadows from the Lost
Yes.
Boys.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Yep.
That is a great song.
Thank
But probably people don't reference that song as often as you would think they should.
The producer of that song is Joel. The movie is Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
And he produced the song too, and the video for the song, and they came to me when the movie was almost finished and asked me to write a song for the movie, and then when they heard the song, they wanted it to be the title song.
So I will go as far as to say, and this is not to just kiss butt here, but I don't think that movie would be what it is today without that title song.
Oh,
Really, that is, I can't picture any other soundtrack playing over that song.
And you brought up Shadow, and that's a band we didn't even touch on that you
Shadow
had.
King.
Shadow King was amazing. Vivian Campbell,
Yes.
if I remember right correctly.
Yeah.
That is a great album.
Fantastic band, great album.
Yes, I love that album.
And
So, yeah.
we were set to make the second album, and he got an offer to join Def Leppard,
Def Leppard.
and he basically just left.
Yeah.
And he was such a name that I couldn't even think about doing another album without him being part of it. So,
Right. Well, that album is stellar, so well done on that
Thanks.
one. For sure.
Have you
That's
ever
one of
heard
my
that?
Favorites.
Oh yeah, and your rendition of "Stairway to Heaven" is
Yes.
pretty awesome too, I will say. So, ladies and
That's a
gentlemen,
one-off.
check
there's a one-off,
check out everything that Lou has. It's all out there. You can find it. You get his albums. Bob, is there a place where they can go to get merchandise? LouGrammOfficial.com. You can also email me, mark@universalimports.com, or Aaron. If you have any questions for Lou, I'm sure you'd be willing, if I sent an email out, Bob, to answer if someone had a question. I mean, I could keep you here all day and all night, but we want to be respectful of your time. And there's a lot more car stuff.
I'll come back again another time, and we'll pick up where we left off.
That's
Oh, I love that.
I love it.
Lou Gramm, thank you so much for your graciousness.
Thanks for
I
having
really
me. I
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
myself today.
Thank you. God bless you.
You
man.
too.
Ladies and gentlemen, look for Lou out at the car shows. Let's hope that this summer will be a little bit different. The pandemic will be behind us, let's hope, and that we'll be able to enjoy cars and sunshine and rock music. So, all right, until next time, I'm Mark from Universal Imports, the Grease and Glamour podcast, coming to you from 834 Linden Avenue, universalimports.com, the only name you need to know for car sales and service. And check out our numerous other podcasts. And thank you, Ray, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Aaron, for being here. And we'll see you next time.